What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. So I want to go ahead and continue with this series as far as the top 5 NBA brothers to play, all right, or basketball. At number 5, I had Horace and Harvey Grant. Harvey Grant had his best years with the then Washington Bullets in the 1990s. Horace Grant had his best years success-wise and production-wise with the Chicago Bulls, though he did have some solid years with the Orlando Magic as well. So at number 4, I have Dominique Wilkins and Gerald Wilkins. Now, these two brothers hold a record. They hold a record for most points scored in a game combined by two brothers. And it happened in a game that was played, I think it was December the 7th of 1991, Atlanta Hawks versus New York Knicks. The Knicks came out ahead in this game. They won that game in overtime. But it's the same game that Dominique Wilkins dropped 52 points, which ended up being the season high. But Gerald Wilkins scored 26 points in that game. So combined, they scored 78 points, which is the record for two brothers performing in one NBA game. They also retired after the same season, the abbreviated 98-99 season, and they were on the same team as you see in this picture. At the time, Gerald, I think, Gerald was 35, 36, I believe, 36. Dominique was 39. So, age had caught up with both of them. And of course, this is when, you played on both sides of the floor. You went to college, so these guys had a lot more wear and tear on them. It's the only year they played on the same team, the Orlando Magic. They also, unfortunately, both suffered Achilles ruptures. Dominique, infamously, I think it was in January of 1992, and I think Gerald Wilkins suffered his Achilles rupture in 1994, which caused him to miss the entire, I believe it was 94-95 season. Now look, Gerald Wilkins, if it was anybody else would have been the athletic superior of the two brothers. And Gerald Wilkins was more than just a great defender. He could score. He wasn't a premier scorer, but he could score. As a matter of fact, I think it was it 86, 87? One of those years, he averaged 19 points a game. He was the second leading scorer for the Knicks behind Patrick Ewing. All right? I want to talk about Gerald Wilkins for a little bit. Gerald Wilkins was, many of you might remember, was the self-proclaimed best defender in the NBA. That's how he viewed himself. He was drafted by the Knicks in 1985, and he was, for a couple of years, the Knicks' second-best player, which goes to show you, not a knock on Gerald Wilkins, but when he's your second-best player, you're probably not a championship team. But, there was a stretch between 1989 and 1994. Before his career, Wilkins averaged 13 points, Gerald Wilkins, 13 points, 2.9 rebounds, and 3 assists. But during his peak from 89 to 94, matter of fact, it might have been 89-90 when he averaged 19 points a game. But during his peak, he averaged 14.6 points, 3.3 rebounds, 3.5 assists, and 1.1 steals per contest. Gerald Wilkins' minutes and production began to decline after the Knicks acquired John Starks in 1990 and then later on Anthony Mason. His minutes began to deteriorate. But he was part of that overachieving 92 Knicks team that took the Bulls to 7 games in the semis. Now, after that year, Gerald Wilkins went to the Cleveland Cavaliers, proclaimed himself the Jordan stopper, and many Cleveland Cavalier fans thought Gerald Wilkins would be that final piece that would allow the Cavaliers to finally push past the Bulls and become a championship team, and that was not to be. All right, that was just not to be. Soon after, with Gerald Wilkins suffered an Achilles rupture, was not the same player, and played on a couple of teams I can't even recall. I think he was on the Sonics one year. He became a journeyman type guy, man. Come off the bench, play a couple minutes, and retired after the 99 season. Dominique Wilkins, of course, had the superior career. Now, Gerald Wilkins did participate in some slam dunk contests, but Dominique is synonymous with the slam dunk, a 2-time slam dunk champion, and some would argue he should be at least a 3-time. And he got robbed in '88 in Chicago. I won't say that he did. He was a 9-time All-Star. He was on the All-NBA first team in 1985-86. 4 times he was on the second team, twice the third team. He won the scoring title in 1985-86, though I have my doubts if he would have won it if Michael Jordan was healthy. And one of the biggest crimes of all times is that he was not on the top 50 players list that came out 25 years ago. But that travesty was made up for when he was selected on the 75th anniversary team recently. And he scored 26,668 points during his NBA career, all right, for a 24.8 points per game career scoring average. Now, Dominique Wilkins was drafted out of Georgia, I think, in '82. He was drafted initially by the Utah Jazz, but he did not want to play there. Ultimately, now I would understand why, because he was a small forward, a little bit bigger than Gerald. Gerald was around 6'6", maybe 200 pounds. Dominique was 6'7"-ish, sometimes rounded up to 6'8", 210, so he was a little bit bigger. He would have been a small forward. You already have Adrian Dantley there. It was in the middle of his peak. So, yeah, I can understand why he didn't want to go there and play behind Adrian Dantley for 4 or 5 years. So he was acquired by Atlanta Hawks. His rights were traded to the Hawks, I believe. Or he was released of his rights and he traded with the Hawks, one of the two. But anyway, he had a 10-year peak from 84 to 94, Dominique Wilkins, where he averaged 28 points, 7 rebounds, 2.9 assists, and 1.4 steals. And he shot 82.5% from the foul line during that period of time. And we all know Dominique Wilkins is an absolute fucking beast on NBA 2K. I mean, just a fucking beast. One of those 2Ks, he was a phenomenal. I think it was 2K12 or 2K11 and 12. He was a beast on those games, man. But anyway, his best years came with Atlanta Hawks. He ruptured his Achilles in January of '92 against the Sixers in Philly, I believe. Some people thought his career was over because he was already showing some signs of athletic slippage. But he came back the next year and averaged 29.9 points per game for the Atlanta Hawks. But during the 93-94 season, he was traded to the Clippers. And then the next year he played with the Boston Celtics, hated it, couldn't stand Coach Phil Ford, I think his name was. The next year, 95-96, he played overseas in Greece. I think he won a championship over there. In 96-97, the year that David Robinson was down, and the year that I think they only won like 20-21 games, the Spurs, Dominique Wilkins played for them and put up some big numbers coming off the bench at age 37. But then he played one more year with the Orlando Magic. He was a shell of himself, as was Gerald Wilkins, and that was it. But both of these guys had some major impact, man. like I said, at his peak, Gerald Wilkins was the second best player on the Knicks in the late 80s. And Dominique Wilkins was, behind Michael Jordan, the most exciting player in the league. And you could argue he was the best in-game dunker in the league. I mean, nobody pulled off the type of dunks in games that he did. I mean, Michael was exciting too, but Dominique was brute force power, you know. So, anyway, I have these guys at number 4. Tell me what you guys think.